Hey YouTube, this is Mike, and I just wanted to share a short little snippet from this episode that I really enjoyed. However, if you want to listen to the full episode, either scroll down this post or head to mikejamesreid.com/podcast for the full episode. Thanks and enjoy. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the I'm going to call it the roller coaster of business. And maybe you could share from your own perspective, but also having seen clients that are running businesses and that kind of thing. You know, business is a roller coaster of emotions, and not just for us as business owners, but also we're managing, especially for you, where you're managing a team of 12 people, you're dealing with their own roller coaster of emotions as well. What have you found over the years helps to smooth the peaks and the troughs of that roller coaster, both for you and also for your team? Do you have any things that kind of help bring the peaks and the troughs back to a more manageable level?
No. Do I? I don't know. It's an emotional roller coaster. There's a lot of ups and downs. I guess it's just planning and trying to be a good business owner and, a good leader. I guess for me, it's been 7 years in business now, and it's just getting better at the skill of running a business. And for me, I've got 15 women, so it can be high emotion, high stress, but it's been really getting the foundations right, and working on culture and working on, getting everybody on the same page. We run quarterly team retreats. So we take everybody out of the office for a day and we spend a day together working on the business, collaborating and getting everyone on the same page and on the same journey. And I think that's been the best thing to mitigate that, because everybody really understands, they're really on board, and they really are getting the business and what we're trying to achieve collectively. Because you can't control things. I've been in the US for 2 weeks. I've had 3 team members that have resigned out of 15. So that's almost a quarter of my team. Things happen, but you've just got to roll with it. You've just got to kind of go, all right, well, that's the reality at the moment. And I also believe that, if you can be open with things, everything happens for a reason. I know that these people will exit and the next people we get will be even better.
It's interesting, I think, for a lot of business owners, staff is one of those areas which I think can get people pretty jaded. They end up deciding over time that they want to strip back their business to not have staff, and yet the very thing that they're looking for is more lifestyle, but the team is the thing that allows you to free up time if you're able to, do it well. When you run that quarterly retreat, do you have a particular format that you use to run that? What do you find works for you guys?
I plan it each time. And actually one of the best things about it is that it makes me plan what we're going to be doing in the business. It's critical. But we go over things like revenue and numbers. We talk about, our KPIs and stuff like that. We always review the previous retreat and what other people's goals were and how they went. What are we doing well? What do we need to be doing better? We do a bit of a block busting where they get to kind of write down all of the things that they want to work on, and then we can kind of collaborate with that so that everybody gets heard as well.
Awesome. Maybe if we shift gears a little bit away from just the vagaries of running a business, I'd love to ask you around what you feel are some of the greatest dichotomies when it comes to health. And, for someone listening whose highest value is business, the reality is they're probably stretched for time, energy, focus, capacity. They've got a family as well, let's say. And they might be thinking in the back of their mind, I've got to choose, what's more important to me. Is it the business or, putting, and the stress that comes with that, or putting their long-term health ahead of that? How do you think we can balance that dichotomy for someone that is like that, who's very type A, ambitious, driven, against, the challenges of good health over the long term?
Well, it comes down to values. And really understanding the importance of health, because no matter what you say, if somebody doesn't value health or see the value in that, they're not going to prioritize it. And this is where you see a lot of entrepreneurs that are burnt out end up really just running themselves into the ground because their highest values are, entrepreneurship and growth, or maybe family or other things, etc. But if you don't put health high up on your value list, then you're never going to do that. But you're not going to put health high up on your value list if you don't understand it and you don't understand the value of it. And also if you have a lack of self-love and a lack of self-nurturing. And we call it like you want to be embodied. So when you're embodied, it's in your body. Yeah, so you're not in your mind, you're in your body, you're aware of what's happening for you and you're really understanding what you need. Often entrepreneurs and people that are working in stress, they're up in their heads, yeah? So they're out of their body and they're really in this mental capacity a lot of the time. So they're making decisions from thinking rather than knowing. So being embodied actually is good for health and it's good for knowing what you need, but it's actually also really good for entrepreneurship because then you're coming from a knowing. You're not coming from a thinking and analysing and worrying and anxiety point of view. You're coming from a real knowing. And this is where that real intuition sort of comes in. So for somebody to want to look after their health and not just do all the stuff, they have to value that. But they need to know that if the healthier they are and the clearer they are, then the better success they're going to have with the other side of things. Health partners with everything. You can't, do anything at your best capacity if you're not healthy and in your mind, body, spirit.
I feel for a lot of people who currently maybe don't have any health issues, there's that chatter that goes on in the back of our mind saying, I better start to make a shift and, change how I'm approaching my health. But without any symptoms, without any problems, it just gets kind of put to the back burner. Have you got any advice or guidance for someone that kind of has a little bit of that chatter in the back of their head saying to them, you should make a change, but they're not experiencing any of the pain or the symptoms yet? What can they do to, start to get more proactive around, better health?
I think go and see somebody. Go and see a naturopath, go and see a nutritionist, go and see somebody that can actually analyse your health because we know the early warning signs. It's for a regular person, they might think like a little bit of bloating or a little bit of anxiety or whatever. When you're used to living with this stuff day to day, you actually consider it normal. So a lot of people will actually go through with these really early warning signs that things are a little bit in balance and they just don't know it. They don't know what's going on. So it's really being a bit more proactive and looking at being preventative. So when people get into their kind of 50s and 60s, often that's when they're like, oh, I'm into that age bracket and they start noticing a few niggling symptoms and it's only then that they start looking after themselves sometimes. But really it's in your like 20s, 30s, 40s that you're setting yourself up for the rest of your life. So it's, it's just worthwhile having a look into that, I think.
I guess a lot of the symptoms that people experience in their 50s, 60s, 70s are the result of decisions they made in their 20s, 30s and 40s, right? In terms of what they did with health and lifestyle, etc.
Yeah, correct.
What about the medical system and kind of against, I suppose against is one way to put it, but, natural remedies and therapies for healing the body? You've just been going around the world essentially talking with experts from all over the globe around, how to make some of the shifts that people need to make when it comes to things like gut health, which is part of a new podcast that you're launching, which we'll talk a little bit more as we go on. But what have you discovered in terms of what's really going on with the medical system and, what kind of misunderstandings or miscommunications are really happening when it comes to what's good for our health?
So I'm from Australia and I would consider our medical system a bit broken. I mean, we're very lucky in that we have care and people can get looked after and we have Medicare, etc. But if somebody is really sick, they're not managed well at all. And what I mean by that is if you have more than one condition that's isolated to different parts of the body, there is no collaboration with that. So I could have a patient who is seeing a cardiologist for their heart, a rheumatologist for their joints, a gastroenterologist for their digestive problems, a neurologist because they're getting, migraines or seizures. And literally those doctors have barely any communication between each other and they'd be on different medications from all of them. So the way that the medical system is set up is that you see somebody, you get put on a drug, which is usually symptomatic. And as a result of being on that drug, you often will end up on other drugs. So it ends up being this cascade. In America, it is so much worse though, because in America, they don't have free healthcare like we do in Australia or they do here in the UK. And it's largely driven by pharmaceutical companies. So one of the really awful dichotomies, I think, is that you have doctors who are skilled to prescribe drugs based on patient symptoms, yeah? So it's their job to look at that. But on the other side of things, you have pharmaceutical companies that are allowed to advertise their drugs on TV, including, hey, if you have these symptoms, you probably have this and you need this drug, which is completely unethical. Because what you then have is you have patient-driven kind of drug intake. So what will happen is, and a good example is I'm interviewing people about gut health, yeah? So one of the big issues of gut health and microbiome is the overuse of antibiotics, okay? It's a massive issue worldwide, and the World Health Organization recognizes that. So there's a advertisement going around in the US at the moment, and it says it's got a little intestinal system, and it's like, hey, if you're bloated, if you're feeling like this, you probably have SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Ask your doctor for rifaximin, which is an antibiotic, right? SIBO shouldn't just be treated with antibiotics. It actually then gives you CFO, which is fungal overgrowth, and then it goes back to bacteria again. B, it's making the problem worse. If somebody has digestive issues and they're going to give them an antibiotic, it's not actually helpful. So it's really scary. It's really terrifying because basically I like to call it sick care, not healthcare, yeah? So it's not actually making people healthier. The healthcare system doesn't make people healthier. It manages symptoms largely, and it doesn't improve quality of life often.
Managing symptoms in isolation, as you say, not looking at it holistically.